Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to today's webinar where we will be discussing some of the most important and relevant topics from the news, especially for GS1 and GS2 paper. Good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. Good evening. We'll wait for a couple of minutes. Let everyone join in and then we will begin the class. Thank you so much. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I hope your class is over. I hope the teachers are not keeping you after 8:30. Good evening, everyone. Sunil, no, we cannot change the time. The time 8:30 is specifically so that people can attend it after their class as well. Yes, Sai, thank you for updating me about the score. I think by the time we finish the class, the match would already be over, right? Hopefully. Good evening. Okay. So once again, a very warm welcome to everyone to this webinar. I hope all of you are doing good. I hope your preparation is also going right on track. As you know, today we will be discussing some important and relevant topics that have remained in the news, especially from the mains examination point of view. These are the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion. Our starting topic, the first one, will be about the caste survey that has taken place in the state of Bihar. We'll be discussing what exactly is that about, the significance of such a survey, why is it that this survey was conducted, and are other states also looking to do the same. Then we will be discussing about the Supreme Court's judgment that came out just a couple of days back on the same-sex marriage, where the Supreme Court of India denied to legalize same-sex marriage in India. Then abortion laws in India. Why is it this in the news? Again, the Supreme Court had to take a decision on whether a woman that is 26 weeks pregnant should be allowed to abort the child or not. This brings to us the question of the NTP, that is a Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. What does it say? How is it valid in India? What is this case all about? Is there any ethical point of view related to this or not? Then we will be discussing about electoral bonds. Electoral bonds, as you know, are in the news. Why? Because we have the Supreme Court now that has referred this matter to a 5-judge bench. So a constitutional bench will now be deciding on this matter. Then we'll be discussing a couple of topics from the Yojana magazine, that is the women empowerment and also the Law Commission of India. Good evening. Okay. I'm getting some comments about the voice part. Give me a moment. Let me see if it can be made better. Give me a moment if there is an issue with the voice. Just a second. How about the voice now? How is the voice now? Better? Okay. Perfect. So since the voice is much better now, I think we are good to go. You did not much miss out on anything that we discussed. We just discussed about what are the topics that we are going to be taking up today. Good evening. Okay. So without any further delay, let's start quickly with our discussion, the very first topic that we have taken up for today. The first topic is from the state of Bihar. Now, the state of Bihar has done something extremely interesting. The state of Bihar just released its data of the caste survey conducted in Bihar. Now, to begin discussing this and dissecting this topic, first let's understand the difference between census and why are we not calling it a census. Please understand, this is not a census, this is a survey. The logic is conducting a census is a subject in the union list. In other words, only the government of India, the union government, can conduct a census. The state governments cannot officially conduct a census. But because the state of Bihar wanted these numbers to come out, because the state of Bihar wanted to see how many backward classes do they have, they went ahead with this exercise. And the excuse that they found out was that we will not call it a census. That is why in the state of Bihar, this is being called as a survey exercise and not a census exercise. In the exam also, just in case you are referring to this, please do not refer to this as a census because it is a survey and not a census. Now let's go ahead and discuss what exactly is this all about. In India, as you know, every 10 years we have the census. Although the 2021 census has not been conducted, but if you go before that, every 10 years we have the census 51, 61, 71, 81, so on and so forth. In the census data that is collected by the central government and is released, we do not have caste based data, meaning that the census conducted by the government of India does not collect your caste data. In other words, there is no clear number about what are the people and how many people do we have in different castes in India. So, for example, when you say that there are, let's assume, 30% population of India that can be considered as OBC, the problem is there is no proof of that. There is no proof of how many people belonging to which particular caste reside in India because our national census does not have that data. Now, in the past few years, especially since 2019, a demand has started in India. Demand raised by politicians mainly from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, where they demanded that we should have a caste based census, meaning that they wanted that in the census conducted by the government, we should have caste based data as well. Now, the question is, why is it that the politicians would want a caste based census? What is it that some political parties can gain out of it? And what is it that some parties are fearing that they are not supporting caste based census? An answer to all these questions can be found out if we understand the concept of reservation. Let's talk about the reservation that we have in government jobs at the center government level. If you talk about reservation that we have, mainly we talk about scheduled caste, we talk about scheduled tribes, then we have the OBC reservation. Now we also have the EWS reservation. These are the caste based reservation. The EWS is not caste based, but these are the caste based reservation that we have in India. Now, if you look at the caste based reservation and how much do we have for the OBC community, for the OBC, how much reservation do we have? 27%. Now, to understand this issue, we have to go back to the idea of how this reservation began and what was the idea behind it. I will take you back to what you studied in Indian polity. In Indian polity, you would remember the Morarji Desai government in the end of the 1970s established a commission called the BP Mandal Commission. Remember? There was a commission led by Mr. BP Mandal. BP Mandal was an ex-chief minister of Bihar. Just for a few days, he was a chief minister. Now, BP Mandal Commission had to decide how do we improve the situation of backward classes in India. The interesting part is we all read about what did they recommend, how much reservation should be given, but we don't read about what they actually said. The BP Mandal Commission said that in India, according to them, 52% of Indians are OBC. According to this commission, 52% Indians are OBC, means over half of India's population is OBC. And they recommended that we should have 27% reservation from them. Now, the question is, or the biggest question asked at that time was, how did they calculate this 52% number? There is no answer to this. There is no answer. How did they calculate the 52% number? Why? Because, as I said, in India, the census data that the government of India has, the census that is conducted once in 10 years, that is not caste based. The last caste based census that we had was 1931. 1931 was the last caste based census. So, after our independence, we had no caste based census. So, there are still question marks. How did the Mandal Commission calculate the 52% number? Many people say that this is an overestimation. Many people said that the OBC population should not be more than 36-37%. On the other hand, the people who got the benefit of the reservation, they were very happy with it. They said that no, 52% is absolutely fine. Now, this question has not been resolved so far. Now, let's come ahead to what happened after the Mandal Commission recommendation were accepted. The Mandal Commission recommendation, as you know, were accepted by VP Singh when he was the Prime Minister. VP Singh, during his Prime Ministership, thought that I will implement these recommendations, which led to a very important case in the Supreme Court called the Indira Sahani case. This led to the Indira Sahani case of 1992. Now, I'm sure all of you would have heard this case, all of you know about this. Indira Sahani was a journalist at that point of time. As a journalist, she was covering the agitation in India against OBC reservation. She was seeing how in Delhi many students are protesting, especially Delhi University students are protesting. So she went to the Supreme Court challenging this decision of the government to give 27% reservation to the OBC. Now, the interesting part was, number one, the Supreme Court said that the government of India can do that. The Supreme Court upheld the OBC quota. The Supreme Court upheld the OBC quota, number one. Supreme Court also said that the total reservation caste base should be 50% max. Supreme Court said that caste based reservation maximum in India should go up to 50% and not more than that. Now, this forms the basis of what is happening today and why do we have this caste based survey in Bihar. A lot of political parties, especially the political parties who have a large supporter base amongst the OBC population, those political parties have been demanding that since OBC population in India is very high, they should be given more reservation than 27%. I'll tell you a very interesting quote. So there is a quote that became very famous because it was used by an earlier leader called Kashi Ram. It is now used once again. It is a quote in Hindi. Let me first tell this in Hindi and then I'll translate in English as well. The quote in Hindi is, जिसकी जितनी भागीदारी उतना जिसकी जितनी आबादी उसकी उतनी भागीदारी. Means the more your population is, the more should be your representation. This is a quote that is very famous in Indian politics. That means if you have a higher percentage of people living in the society, that means you should have higher people even in the government jobs as well. That demand now has started once again because political parties, especially in states such as UP and Bihar, which have a high OBC population, have been demanding that let us have exact number. How many OBCs do we have in India so that then they can demand a higher reservation. The entire objective of this exercise is to prove with numbers, with data, even in the Supreme Court, that see the OBC population is much higher than 27%, and thus the Supreme Court should remove their 50% limit, and the Supreme Court should give a higher reservation to the OBC. That is what the idea behind having this survey is. At the heart of it, it is all politics. Because at the heart of it, whether a political party supports this survey or not depends upon whether the political party has enough supporter base amongst the OBC voters or not. If a political party feels that they have a big supporter base amongst the OBC population, that political party is supporting the survey. Those political parties who think that they might lose out on the votes from the other side, they are right now refusing to accept or support this survey. These are the numbers that have come out from Bihar. Now, please remember, the Bihar number, the Bihar data that has come out, you do not need to remember all of this. For the UPSC examination point of view, you don't have to remember exact data, state-wise data of different castes. Rather than that, what is more important for us is to understand the relevance and the significance of this survey. Why was it done? What was the thinking behind it? As far as the numbers are concerned, as per the Bihar government, extremely backward classes are more than 36% in Bihar. OBCs are over 27% in Bihar. That is what the Bihar caste survey that has come out has told us. Now, as I said earlier, the demand to have a caste-based census or a caste-based survey is not a very old demand. It's a demand that started in 2019. The demand took over, or the demand originated first in Bihar, and then we saw many political parties across the country, especially the ones which are opposite to the BJP or are sitting in the opposition, they are demanding the same. The Bihar government, in fact, allocated 500 crore rupees just for this particular exercise, and this number has come out. I'll tell you something very interesting. This decision of the Bihar government to conduct the survey, are they allowed to conduct such a survey or not? Can a state government do this or not? This was, in fact, questioned in the higher judiciary. And do you know what the Bihar government did? The Bihar government released the survey numbers one day before the Supreme Court was about to hear the matter. This is how politics is. Because even before the Supreme Court could say that no, you should not do this, just one day before that, release the numbers and it's all done. So this is what the Bihar government did. The next day, it was supposed to be the matter was supposed to be in the Supreme Court, but it did not really have a chance. This survey exercise was conducted in two phases. The first one was about having a number of households counted and recorded. And then the second phase was about having data about caste, subcaste, socio-economic conditions, etc. Please remember, the Bihar government says that they have even more data. The Bihar government, for example, if you see the current data only talks about how many OBCs and how many extremely backward classes. They don't talk about within the OBC how many classes of citizens are there, how many people are from which caste. That is the second data. That data has not been released so far. Maybe the Bihar government may roll out the other data as well about the internal division and categorization of population amongst the backward classes as well. But that data so far has not come out. So it remains to be seen whether that comes out or not. Now, the important point is, why is this significant? Why is it that so many political parties were demanding this? As I said, at the end of the day, the answer to this lies in the working of a political party, in the support base that they have. If the political party believes that their support base would be happy if the reservation quota for OBC increases, then those parties are supporting it. If the political party thinks that no, their support base will be unhappy if the OBC reservation gets increased, then they do not support this kind of a survey. The first significance is after this, if such a survey is held in other parts of the country, or if a caste based census is conducted, we might see increase in the OBC quota. That would automatically lead to increase in the 50% reservation limit as well. The Supreme Court in the Indra Sahni case gave the 50% reservation limit, although they did say that under exceptional circumstances this can be breached. There are multiple states that have breached it. Tamil Nadu, for example, has breached it. They have given 69% reservation. The reason why their law is still going on right now is because Tamil Nadu's reservation law is placed in the ninth schedule of the constitution, which gives them at least certain protection. It is also significant because under the directive principles of the state policy, the government is obliged to take care of the backward classes. If there are certain people in our population that are backward economically, socially, educationally, it is the government's responsibility to take care of them. Only then would we achieve our true dream of Sarvodaya. As you know, Sarvodaya is something of an ideology propagated by Mahatma Gandhi as well. The idea of Sarvodaya means everyone's benefit or everyone's development. Or in today's words, I don't want to sound political, but in today's words, let's call it Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So, inclusive growth, whatever you want to call it, but yes, that is what the idea of Sarvodaya is. All of this, again, are pointers that are given by those people who support this survey. Also, people say that at present, the kind of census that is conducted by the government of India, it does not give the government of India holistic data. The data that we have in the form of census does not have a lot of important social indicators. That is why the policy making is not up to the mark. I'll tell you one more thing. For example, the other problem that we have in India is, let's assume the OBC is, or the OBCs are given 27% reservation. The problem is, even in this 27% reservation, only a few important castes take most of the reservation benefits. For example, let's assume there are 100 castes that are under OBC. Out of those 100, reservation benefit is not equally divided. Few of them dominate, few of them get more benefits as compared to the others. That can also be corrected if we have exact data from the side of the government. And this is why all this caste based census is important. It will allow the government to have much better targeted policies. It will allow the government to focus on those groups that are at a disadvantage. It will also allow the government to have evidence based decision making. Because again, right now, if you don't know a certain group that is at a disadvantage has how many members, then how much money will you allocate? How will you make policies? That is still not clear. And that is why a lot of people do support this idea. They may not support this idea for reservation benefits. But yes, even apart from reservation, the other policies that the governments are making, even those can be made much better, much more targeted if we have exact data coming out. On the other hand, there may be some issues. I can see in the chat even today, there are some people who are still saying that no, we don't support this because it will increase reservation. So, again, this is not such an easy question to answer for the government. Any change in the reservation policy, whenever it has happened, be it giving a reservation, be it the Supreme Court taking away reservation from certain groups, be it increasing reservation, any decision by the government regarding reservation has always had a very diverse reaction from the society. People obviously who get the benefits are in support of it, while the others who don't get the benefits are not really in support of it. The other point here to mention is, a lot of people in India also try to hide their caste. For example, many people try to hide their identity. When the survey officers go and they ask for data, a lot of times the people don't want to reveal because they fear that they will be discriminated against. And this is a reality in today's society. In today's society, if you actually see, there is still caste-based there is still caste-based discrimination that exists. In a lot of rural areas, you will see Dalits being attacked in their own wedding just because they had a loud celebration. You will see Dalit grooms being attacked because they are sitting on a horse while in their own wedding. So, caste based discrimination is a reality, and we cannot ignore the fact that it still exists in India. Whether reservation is the answer to this or not, I don't know. But we have to all accept and understand the fact that caste based discrimination is a reality that exists in our society. You might not see it in your immediate circle, you might not see it happening to your friend, you might not see it happening in your own household or in your own neighbor. But if you look at the all India picture on a much larger scale, caste based discrimination still exists to a very, very, very large extent. Just a bit of closing remarks on this topic. India now does not have a caste based census. The caste based census we had last when the numbers came out was in 1931 when the British were here. The interesting part is in 2011, when the census was conducted, the government did take caste data as well. In 2011, the government of India did take caste based data as well. However, the most interesting part is those numbers have still not been revealed. 2011, the census that we had was caste based census, but the government of India never released the numbers. There are different arguments given, different reasoning. Why was it not released? The government of India says that data was corrupt. The government of India says that no, that data collection method was not correct. But many people say maybe the government or the ruling party did not like the numbers and they did not reveal it because they thought that maybe it will act to their disadvantage. But again, no clarity on why the government did not reveal the numbers of the last census, that is the caste based numbers. This is a practice question for you from this part. Now, before I move on, a lot of questions have come in. Uh, Anyways, whenever we discuss any such topic related to caste reservation, there are a lot of questions that come in. So, what I will do is I will answer a lot of your questions, but let's keep the questions relevant to the topic. If there are questions which are just irrelevant to the topic, I will prefer skipping those. Let me see. Okay. The first question, long one that I have is Nikhil. With the India alliance asking for jiski jitni sankhya, utni hissadari, are we heading to something like Lebanon? If we are able to divide Indians on basis of caste, reservation, etc., is it equal proof of Winston Churchill? Long question. First of all, politics-based questions based on manifestos of political parties are not asked by the UPSC. Secondly, many political parties demand a lot of different things. So let's not go to the extent of saying that we are taking the shape of Lebanon, where they have reservation for different posts, for different religions. I will not go to the extreme of it. Many demands are made by many political parties over the years. Only when the demands are accepted, when the changes actually happen, only then it is a time to discuss. But right now, just because a person has demanded something doesn't mean that it merits a discussion. I can demand, for example, let's say that there should be 100% reservation for someone, but that doesn't really make any merit for discussion. Plus, compare ourselves to Lebanon is too much of a stretch, I would say, at least for now. Sabai saying OBC excluding SC and ST. Sabai, I don't know what your question is, but yes, OBCs are different, SC, ST are different, if that is what you're asking. Then Nikhil, there is not even definition of OBC, just political game. Banya in OBC, is it just to divide India for votes, 5 years of power? Nikhil, again, let's not discuss politics-based questions. I know it's a very interesting thing to discuss over a cup of tea. Who will vote? How many people will vote? But that's not what UPSC exam asks you. You can look at your news channel; they're filled with these kind of discussions. Please take all your questions to them and they'll be happy to answer, I'm very sure. Akansha has a question. What was the need of providing reservation to OBC when they comprise majority of population? Shouldn't the reservation be to minority? Are the ones who are not getting representation? Akansha, see, it's not to say that reservation is based on the idea of how many people there exist. You are making an idea in your mind that reservation should be equal to those or given to those who are lesser in numbers. But that is never the idea. Even if you look at the constitution, even if you look at article 15, article 16, the idea is not to give reservation to those who are lesser in number. The idea is to give it to those who have been discriminated against or who have been, let's say, backward as compared to the others. You can be backward as compared to others even when you are more in number as compared to others. On the contrary, the rich and powerful will always be few. Poorer people will always be in the majority. So I don't confuse this idea of reservation with the number of people. That is just not how it works. Then I have a question from Vedshri. But minority get reservation as they are marginalized. No, no, no. I'll stop you there. Minorities don't get reservation. It's a misconception many people have. There is no reservation for minorities. Minorities have certain government schemes, but there's no reservation for minorities. So let's get that fact correct. Then I have this a continue of the question by Vedshri. If OBC population more than half, why do they need reservation? Again, I think I answered this question. Reservation in India or anywhere is never given on the basis of number. Please understand this. There is nothing related to how much population do you have as compared to do you need reservation or not. How much reservation you need can be decided by number. Please understand this idea. How much reservation you need is decided by the number, or it has to be decided by the number as per these political parties. But whether OBC need reservation or not, this idea cannot be answered on the basis of whether OBC are in minority or not. Number game is very different when you're answering the question whether they need reservation or not. Then Afrin is saying this survey has spread social equality. Afrin, no survey spreads social equality. Survey is just a collection of data that gives you the numbers. Whether you want to now spread equality or not, that's up to you. No survey spreads or takes away your equality. Then Ritu is saying if the question asks about last caste-based census done, so answer would be 1931 or 2011. Miss Ritu, don't worry. These kind of random questions will not be asked. The UPSC knows that when there is a dicey answer, they will not ask the questions. Let's focus on what the answers should be. Let's not make up our own questions. But if we start making our own questions, then we have a long, long way to go. Let's leave that to the UPSC, right? What should the question be? Why to increase our own workload and think of questions also from the point of view of the UPSC? Okay, so these were the questions given to me. Again, please understand something, and I will repeat because this is one of those topics wherever we have any question or any discussion about reservation or these kind of things, there are a lot of emotions that come in from the people, right? A lot of people have very different points of view here, but a couple of things here. Just because you like a topic more, just because you think of a topic more than others, that doesn't mean that it becomes so important that you will go into so many details of it, which is not even relevant for the UPSC. So, for example, number one, don't focus a lot on what is happening in politics as such, because the politics is not really important for us. For us, it is much more important to focus on what is the significance of this survey, what will happen with this, the Supreme Court judgments, etc. Whether a party has said something in their manifesto, what will happen doesn't really matter for us. I know these are interesting things to discuss because you discuss this with your parents, with your friends. It's a pretty interesting topic. But from the UPSC point of view, let us focus much more on what exactly is the point of this exercise, the significance of it, and what can happen later on. All right, then. These were the questions that were allotted to me from the first topic. The second topic that we have that we'll take up is the Supreme Court's verdict on the same-sex marriage. I'll be interested to see whether you have equal number of questions from this. All of you, those who had a lot of questions from the caste-based survey. Anyway, let's go ahead then. So, the second topic is about the... and if you do have questions, happy to answer. So, the second topic is based on the recent Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court just a couple of days back denied that saying that we cannot legalize same sex marriage. Let's understand the idea in a short bit. What is this issue all about? What is it that the petitioners have been demanding, and what is it that the Supreme Court has said? So, what the petitioners were demanding is, in India, we have a law called the Special Marriage Act. We have a law called the Special Marriage Act of 1954. In short, it is called the SMA 1954. Now, this SMA, or the Special Marriage Act of 1964, what does it say? Basically, this law was passed so that if two people belonging to different religions are getting married and they don't want to change their religion, they don't want to basically go into the other religion, they want to continue being in their own religion. The problem now lies that under which personal law will their marriage be considered? For example, we have different personal laws in India based on different religions. For Muslims, for Hindus, Sikh, Parsis, etc., we have different personal laws. Now, the personal laws talk about when two people of the same religion marry. But the personal laws don't talk about whether a person from some other religion marries into their religion, then what will happen? So the question here becomes, how will laws such as divorce work? How can they get a divorce? Under what condition will they get a divorce? Because that is different for different religions. Inheritance of property, all these kind of things are religion based in India. So because two people, let's assume, they have different religions and they come together to marry, this is where the government of India in 1954 passed a law called the Special Marriage Act of 1954. The idea is two people belonging to different religions can come together, marry, and they will be recognized, their marriage will be recognized under this law. The interesting part is, even if two people belonging to the same religion, let's say there are two people, man and a woman, both of them Hindu or both of them Muslim or both of them Sikh or whatever, if they want, they can also still get married under the Special Marriage Act, so that they can give better rights to their children. If they think that they don't like the laws of their own religion, they can get married under the Special Marriage Act. So now what the question is, and why the topic is in the news, petitioners from the LGBTQI community, they have demanded, or they were demanding rather, that the government of India should legalize same sex marriage under this law. The government was not doing it, so they went to the Supreme Court. They asked the Supreme Court to legalize the idea of same sex marriage in India. They are basically making two important points. First point, the Special Marriage Act. They say that the Special Marriage Act is made for such purposes only. So why not have same sex marriage also recognized under Special Marriage Act? The second argument that they give is, in India, homosexuality has already been decriminalized. Homosexuality that used to be a criminal offense earlier, it has been decriminalized now. So why not take the next step, and why not also allow same sex marriage? These were the two big arguments made. First, to get recognition for same sex marriage under the Special Marriage Act. And second, since homosexuality has already been decriminalized in the Navteej Johar case, why not go ahead and have the next step taken? Why not legalize same sex marriage as well? What did the Supreme Court do? The Supreme Court was hearing this matter in a five-judge bench. In the five-judge bench, the Supreme Court refused to legalize the idea of same-sex marriage. Now, please understand, keep this in mind. If you look around the world, there are about 32 countries that have legalized the idea of same-sex marriage. So there are a few countries, not all of them, but there are a few countries, 32 of them, that have accepted and given legal recognition to same-sex marriage. India is not one of them so far. However, what the Supreme Court said is interesting. Please understand this. Supreme Court did not say that we are against this idea. Meaning that Supreme Court did not say that we are against this idea. What the Supreme Court said was, it is the responsibility of the parliament to make such laws. Let the parliament decide. If the parliament today, let's say, wants to make a law, then they can. If the parliament says that they don't want to make a law in this, that is also fine. But the Supreme Court said that we will not decide on our own. They did not say that we cannot approve this or this is bad or whatever. No. They just said it is the domain of the parliament to make such a law and we will not do that. Now, this is interesting. Interesting in the sense that if you look at, let's assume, in the past, Supreme Court has never let go of any opportunity to take away or to make a law on their own. There are so many examples of judicial activism. There is the collegium system. You talk about how the Supreme Court takes up the matter themselves. You talk about the PIL. All these things are inventions of the Supreme Court only. So now for the Supreme Court to say that no, we will not make a law, let the parliament make a law, that is something that was not expected from the Supreme Court, but they did that. The second thing that the Supreme Court did was, Supreme Court said that we understand that the LGBTQI community faces a lot of discrimination in India. They have a very hard time in finding jobs. They have a very hard time in finding homes when they want to rent out a house. The Supreme Court asked the government of India to make a high-powered committee headed by a cabinet minister to look into what can be done to improve the living condition of LGBTQI community in India. So the Supreme Court did not disapprove of this idea. Please do remember that. Supreme Court said that we cannot accept this right now. Why? Because number one, the Special Marriage Act was not made for this purpose. The Special Marriage Act, when it was created, the purpose was to ensure and give an option to people from different religions to come and get married. The idea of making the Special Marriage Act was never to have same-sex marriage recognized under it. The Chief Justice of India, in fact, was quoted. He was a part of the five-judge bench. The Chief Justice of India said that I cannot put in new words in the Special Marriage Act. He said that I will read the Special Marriage Act as it is. Don't expect me to put in new words in the act. When the petitioner said that the Special Marriage Act should be given or should give more freedom, he specifically said that please don't expect me to put in new words. I will read the act as it is. And in the current form, the Supreme Court said that it does not support the idea of legalizing same-sex marriage by itself. The parliament can do that if they want. Yes, Parshuram, it was a 3-2 result. So again, in this 3-2 result, again, a very interesting part was, in the 3-2 result, do you know out of the 5 judges, the 2 senior most judges were in minority? That's again very interesting. The 2 senior most judges were actually in minority. And the 3, so as to say, junior judges were in the majority. But even then, because the way the Supreme Court works is that the majority rule or the majority verdict will be the final verdict. So by a 3-2 verdict, we saw that the Supreme Court saying that no, we will not legalize it. It's a case of juniors going one above the seniors. That is how the Supreme Court decided the matter. And they said that the parliament can do this if they want to, but we will not go ahead and do this from our end. Now, this is interesting. Please understand something. There is an interesting trend in politics. I'll give you an idea. So what happens is, whenever the government has to make a decision on a very controversial matter, for example, let's say homosexuality, or let's say same-sex marriage. When it comes to time of making such controversial decisions, usually what the governments do is, governments usually do not take any decision. Because the governments or the parties in power always fear that if we make a certain decision, some people might not like it, we will lose the votes. So rather than us making a law, most political parties leave these critical topics to the Supreme Court, so that they can blame the Supreme Court later on when they go to ask for votes from the people. They will say, oh, we did not do anything, man. See, the Supreme Court did it. So please leave us aside. So this is why you will see that the Supreme Court usually takes up these kind of cases. Decriminalization of homosexuality is one example of this only. In When the British were here in the IPC, Section 377 decriminalize or criminalize homosexuality. Homosexuality means having sexual relations amongst the people of same gender. That was criminalized. It was a criminal offense when the British were here. This Section 377 of the IPC was struck down by the courts only. The governments could never do that. Even if the government wanted to, they would never do that. Why? Because they think this is such a controversial topic in our society that if the government takes a decision, government might lose out on its supporters. So you will see a lot of times the governments wait for the judiciary to decide on these kind of topics. But now the judiciary has, as they say, pushed the ball in the court of the government that your turn now. We have taken our shot. Now you decide what do you have to do. We will not take a call this time around. So now it is to be seen whether the government takes a decision or whether the government ignores it. Right now, the government has not given any indication of supporting this. In fact, when the petition was first filed in the Supreme Court few months back when the petitioners came to Supreme Court for same-sex marriage, the Supreme Court first asked the government that what is your view? What do you think should be done? Do you support this or not? And the government said, we do not support this idea. So if you actually see, the government has already said what they want. The government will just be repeating it, but the government has already said what they want. Because they already said it in the Supreme Court a few months back. They sent the Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, who said that no, we don't support this idea. So it would be very, very, I would say, surprising if the government actually takes a certain decision. Most probably they will not. Supreme Court said relationship of marriage is not a static one, means it keeps changing. Supreme Court supported this idea that everyone has equal rights. But again, they said that we will not go ahead and legalize this. Let the government take the decision whether or not they want to accept this idea or not. Also, the petitioner said that right to marriage is a fundamental right. We should be allowed to marry whoever we want. The Supreme Court said no. It's not a fundamental right. It is actually a statutory right as per the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said it's a statutory right. Now, there is one more very interesting thing that happened. The people who were against this petition, the people who rejected the idea, the people who were against it, their argument was that LGBTQ or homosexuality is only a metro based idea. Only people of the big cities, only rich people have time for this. This is something of a fashion statement. That is what people against it said. That's it. They said, no, this is just a idea that is in the metro cities. People in the small cities don't even think about it. Supreme Court very strictly rejected the idea. Supreme Court said that is not true. Supreme Court said that the idea of same-sex marriage is not an idea that is only in the minds of people living in the metro cities. There may be people from the LGBTQI community that are living in the rural areas also. There may be people from this community living in the small cities also. But they have never revealed their identity because of the feeling of being judged. And that is what the Supreme Court basically said. Supreme Court did not say that we are against this idea, but they just said that let the government decide on it and we will not take a call right now. Let the government decide what they want. Supreme Court in the past also, by the way, has given certain judgments regarding the concept of marriage and same-sex marriage. The interesting part is, earlier, Supreme Court has said that right to marriage should be a fundamental right. This is again something that we have seen Supreme Court changing its stand on. This time around, Supreme Court said that right to marriage is not a fundamental right. But in 2018, in Shafin Jahan case, the Supreme Court said that no, right to marriage should be a part of fundamental rights only. In fact, they said the right to marry the person of your choice should be under or is considered integral to Article number 21. Although this time around, they did not accept this. They said that no, it's a statutory right. As you know, the Supreme Court has the power, or I should say, the right to overturn their own decisions. Supreme Court is not bound by what they said earlier. Supreme Court can deny what they said earlier, just like the excuses that you give to your parents. Sometimes you tell, I did not do this because of this, and you give some other excuse, and you say the third excuse. So Supreme Court can also basically go back on what they said earlier, and this is what they have done in this case as well. Also, the Supreme Court of India famously decriminalized homosexuality in the Navtej Singh Johar case. In the Navtej Singh Johar case, the Supreme Court said that the people belonging to the LGBTQ community are entitled to, like the other citizens, of full constitutional rights given by the Constitution. So the Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality in the famous Navtej Singh Johar case of 2018, saying that they deserve equal protection under the law. As I said earlier, and repeat this once again, the Supreme Court has asked the government of India to make a high powered committee to look into what kind of rights should be given to LGBTQ. For example, the Supreme Court has asked the government of India whether we can allow same sex couples to have a joint bank account. Even if they are not married, can they have a joint bank account or not? Supreme Court has asked this question to the government to decide that. Again, Supreme Court has played the ball in the court of the government. Now you decide, you take the fall. We will not decide anything. The Supreme Court also said to the government, can they be given hereditary rights? For example, can they, even without being married, pass on each other's property to themselves? Something that only the married couples can do. This is something that the government of India has to decide. All these things are now in the court of the government. Those who don't know the full form here, LGBTQ full form would be L for lesbian, G is for the gay community, B is for bisexual community, T is for the transgender community, and Q is for the queer community. So this is altogether called the LGBTQ community. Now, there are arguments given both in favor of why should we have same-sex marriage in the country, and there are arguments against as well. The biggest argument, the first one that comes to your mind, is obviously have same-sex marriage to allow equality under law. If you have equality under law, you should allow similar kind of rights to a person irrespective of their gender. Doesn't matter what gender the person is, doesn't matter what sexual orientation you have, you should be allowed to have the same kind of rights that others have. Secondly, strengthening families and communities. How would it strengthen families and communities? See, when you have the idea of a same-sex marriage, that means you are allowing freedom to the person to live with a person of his or her choice. Let's assume there's a person who is gay, who does not want to marry a woman, but under family pressure, under society's pressure, the male goes on to marry a female. This will ruin both of their lives. Not just one, this will ruin both of their lives. So rather than forcing someone to go against their own sexual orientation, why not allow them so that it can be better for their family, it can be better for the community. Also, cohabitation is a fundamental right. Cohabitation means right to live together. It means right to live together. Also, the biological gender cannot be absolute now. For example, you cannot always force upon this idea that you may have a certain identity and the other person should also have the same identity. Globally, it is accepted. Over 32 countries have now made it legal. Now, you might see different numbers given in some other papers. For example, someone was saying that today Hindu said 34 nations. So the reason why the numbers are different here is different nations have different types of laws with certain restrictions. Certain restrictions mean, for example, they might allow same-sex marriage with certain restrictions. And that is why it's safer to say over 30 countries. If you really want to quote this, You can say over 30 nations. Rather than going into exact detail of it, even if you quote over 30 nations allow this, that would be absolutely fine. Similarly, there are arguments given against the idea of same sex marriage. First, all the religions and cultures speak against it. There is no religion that talks in favor of same sex marriage, and there's no exception to this. So, going against religious or cultural beliefs, that can be a challenge. The challenge of procreation means how will you reproduce? Obviously, the idea to this is adoption. But the idea is, can you have a natural baby of your own with both the couples being involved? Then there are legal issues. There would be a lot of changes in the law that would be required. Just saying that yes, you can go ahead and have same sex marriage would not really be enough. You will have to change a lot of laws, inheritance of property, divorce, etc. How would you allow that? How would you not allow that? So there will be a lot of changes in the law that would be required. And the issue with the adoption of children. I'll give you an example. If you look at the adoption laws in India, for example, do you know a single male, if you want to adopt a child, let's say you are a male and you are single, you cannot adopt a girl child. Do you know that? As per the law, single male can't adopt a girl child. So there are a lot of combination that now you will have to understand. Would you allow a gay couple to adopt a girl child or not? How would you now see that situation unfolding? So that also remains a big challenge. Thus, either way, if you allow this or if you don't allow this, either way, it's not going to be a very easy, straightforward decision. In both the aspects, you'll have to make a lot of changes and you will have to make sure that there is a much more understanding and acceptance in the society. For example, see, many people still don't accept this as a idea that should exist, although it does not really affect them. What someone is doing in their personal life, in their private life, should not affect you. For example, let's say a lot of people, and I see them in the chat also, let's say a lot of people say that no, this should not be allowed. The question that is asked from the other side is, how does it affect you? How does it affect you? Who is living with whom or who is married to whom in the other house? It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect you. But anyways, all these kind of questions have been raised. This was the second article that we have, and a lot of people are okay. 6, 7 people have told me Kohli has hit a century and India has won. Congratulations to them as well. Congratulations, everyone. Can we now come back to the idea of same-sex marriage? Okay, perfect. Kohli has won. Congratulations. Okay, let me take up the questions that we have. A lot of questions again have come in. Let me quickly take those up. Okay. Gunjan has a question. Okay, a couple of questions from the last topic as well. Okay, Gunjan has a question. Clear it, should we give another measure other than reservation for upliftment of educationally socially backward section? Gunjan, the question that you have is, should we have something else apart from reservation for upliftment? My question is, something else like what? Something else like what? At the end of the day, when you want to uplift someone, what do? You give them job opportunity, give them better education. What else? There is no other idea. If you have some other idea, great. Go ahead and give some suggestion. Who is stopping you? Then I have a question from Sandy. Caste-based reservation we have over 70 years. It's sustainable doing it because it led to some time conflict in Manipur. What's the way forward? See, Sandy, the idea is there is no easy answer to whether reservation should be allowed or not, or should continue or not, because everyone you ask will have a different answer. It's not, the question is not like where does the sun rise and where does the sun set. That's the question which will have same answer, right? So you all agree to this. But when you have a question like this, whether reservation should be allowed or not, everyone will have a different answer depending on their background. No one can be objective in this. If someone who doesn't get the benefits of reservation, that person will obviously say reservation is bad. Someone who gets the benefit, they'll always say reservation is good. So it's not a question that can get you an objective answer from anyone. But yes, the facts are, reservation when it was introduced, it was never supposed to be a permanent fixture. It was always supposed to be for some time. But reservation is something that you can give, but taking it back becomes very difficult because the expectations of people are very, very high. Unless you have a system in a country where people can get more jobs. See, understand the idea. Why do people want reservation? People want reservation because they think without reservation they can't get enough jobs and education opportunity, right? The entire idea of the having reservation is this only, now. Why do you want reservation? You want reservation because you think without that you might not be able to get a good job or good education opportunity. So the answer is here. If you already have enough jobs in the society, if you already have enough educational opportunities for everyone, then there will not be any need of it. So the idea of whether or not you want to take up reservation, the answer does not lie in whether reservation should continue or not, how much reservation. No, we are solving the problem in a wrong manner. The answer to the problem is not about how high or how low the reservation should be. The problem is, why do people want reservation? Because there are not enough jobs. So maybe solve that problem and the problem will be solved. That's what my view is. Anyways, then I have a lot of questions from. Okay, Nikhil has a long question. Nikhil, man, you type a lot, man. Okay, Nikhil is saying, when Parliament can make special marriage act for marriages across religion and caste, why isn't it possible to make completely separate law for marriage and LGBTQ? Why force a community to live with a single person and lie? Nikhil, I am not saying, no one has said that it is impossible for the Parliament. You are assuming, why is it not possible for the Parliament? Who said it's impossible? It is possible. The answer to this lies in the people who are sitting in the Parliament. So if you want them to pass this law, next time when 2024 elections happen, maybe when someone comes to ask you for a vote, ask them this question: will you support for this law or not? If they do, then vote for them. No. See, the answer lies in how you elect your representative. The answer is not anywhere else. So it's not impossible for the Parliament to pass it. They can. Vaishri Singh, LGBTQIA plus is a wide spectrum and every person faces n number of problems which are diverse. How will the government plan and formulate the rights and policies for them? We do have an act for transgender which already has loopholes. The government committee who are suffering because of the sexual orientation. See, Vaishri, the question that you're asking is a very genuine and valid question. There's no answer to this. The only answer is, to make good laws, they have to be detailed only. There is no other way out. For example, it's easy for us to discuss a topic by time and time again referring this to LGBTQI community. But what we have to understand, and as you rightly said, every community has their own set of challenges. So they cannot be just one single law. How will it happen? The Parliament has to decide that. They will have to take this into account because they have done this in the past. For different religions, we have different laws, don't we? Similarly, they have to do this as well. The solution is not in making one blanket law because that will not be in the interest of anyone. Whew. Okay, two more questions to go. Deepika has a question. This idea is not based in metro cities. My college in a small city, we have so many cases of homosexuality in girls in the college itself. What are your views in regard of this act? Should it be legalized or not, in your opinion? Deepika, my opinion does not really matter. So I'm not in the Supreme Court and I'm not in the Parliament. So if you're not in the Supreme Court and not in the Parliament, then your opinion does not really matter. See, I believe in the concept of lit and let live. So if such a law is making someone happy and it's not impacting someone else's life negatively, then why not? Everyone should have the right to live happily, man. There's only one life that we have. Okay, then I have Rashi. Does the quote "Jitni abadi utni bhagidari" fit in today's scenario? Is it binding on the government to fulfill the bhagidari of a particular caste according to Abadi? No, Rashi does. It is not obligation of the government. Whether the question that you have is whether it fits in today's scenario or not. Opposition members say that yes, it does fit and it should fit. Kashiram, who gave this quote, famously wanted it to fit, but in the present context, at least the government does not seem to be in favor of it, at least for now. No one knows the future in Indian politics, but yes. Okay, let's go ahead. Some people are asking what is the meaning of lost opportunity. Lost opportunity means something that you could have done that they should have done, but they did not. The meaning of this question is the Supreme Court should have taken this opportunity to legalize same sex marriage, but they did not. What are your views about it? This is what the question is. Okay. All right, then. Let's go ahead. Guys, tell me this. Do you ask so many questions in all the webinars, or do you reserve those questions for this webinar? Just genuinely curious to know. You you do ask a lot of these questions to all the webinars, right? Or this is just for you. This is just for this one. That you type all of this that today I will get it answered. Kibriya, I have also noticed that I get all these questions, man. And the long questions, not the short ones. There are 6 questions that I have with over 5 sentences. I wish you write this much in your mains exam also. Don't just reserve it for here. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, let's go ahead then. So, the next topic that we have is the abortion laws in India. Now, if you look at the abortion laws in India, it's a topic that remains in the news after every few weeks because we usually have some unfortunate case coming sometime or the other that makes up in the news. So basically, what is the issue now? So what has happened in simple terms is there is a lady who already has 2 kids. She is now pregnant with a third kid, and she is 26 weeks pregnant. She went to the Supreme Court saying that I should be given the right to abort the kid. Now the question first is, why did she have to go to the Supreme Court? Because the law in India is, if you are pregnant over 24 weeks, then the judiciary has to take a call. If you are over 24 weeks pregnant, then the judiciary has to take a call. Now, this is a bigger question. The bigger question and the debate is not just in India. Around the world, in many countries, especially the US, there's a big debate which is called right to life versus the right to choice. So basically, let's understand this. Right to life means the right of the child to live, right of the fetus to live. That is called right to life. So people who support right to life, they say no abortion should be allowed. So people who support this idea that there should be right to life, they say that no abortion should be allowed. Right to choice means it is the choice of the women. Let the women decide. Let the women decide. It's her body. It's going to be her child. So let her decide whether she is in a physical, mental, financial state to take care of the child or not. Now, what has happened is, the other part of the story is, even if you are someone who has right to choice, please understand me, this is not the end of it. Let's say even if a country allows right to choice, like in India, we have right to choice. We have given women the choice if they want to abort the kid or not. But even when you have right to choice, even then there has to be a certain limit within which you have to exercise this choice. Within which you have the exercise this choice. I'll give you an example. Now, again, I'm not saying the example is very adequate. It's not an example that fits in, but I'll give a very simple example, okay, so that you can understand. Let's assume that you book a hotel, okay, and your hotel booking is for 3rd of December. Okay, you book a hotel today, you book it for 3rd of December. Now the hotel tells you you are allowed to cancel this. You're allowed to cancel this till 30th of November. If you cancel by 30th November, fine, we will refund all your money, no problem with that. But if you don't cancel it, if you cancel it after that, then there will be a charge or a punishment, or you will not be allowed to do this, whatever you want. Kind of a very, again, I'm not saying it's a perfect example, but kind of similar thing happens here. You have the right to choice, but the right to choice does not mean that you can exercise it at any point of time. Why? Because as per science also, after certain weeks, there is a human life that has taken birth. Now, if you abort the kid or you abort the fetus, it's considered as taking away someone's life. And this is true with every country. Every country around the world has put some limit on till how much time can you have abortion? No country says that okay, you can have abortion in 40th week also, 45th week also. No, because that would then be considered as taking away someone's life who has already been born. So there is always a limit. It's not that India doesn't have a limit or other countries won't have a limit. Now in India, the Supreme Court had to decide this matter, and the matter was the women says that I am suffering from depression. The woman says, after my second child was born, ever since then, I have been in depression. So I will not be able to take care of a third child now. So rather than that, I should be allowed to abort the child. The Supreme Court said two very interesting things, that Supreme Court was very angry, in fact. Supreme Court said that no, you, unless there is a danger to your life, unless the doctors say that due to pregnancy you can die, we cannot allow you to abort the child. Secondly, if you have a situation where you did not know about the pregnancy, then we would have allowed, but you knew about it earlier. Why did you not take action earlier? I'll give you an example, a real example. So a few years back, there was a case of a very young girl who was a rape victim. Okay, so there was a young girl who was raped, and now this young girl became pregnant, and the issue is she did not know about her pregnancy. Why? Because the time that she became pregnant, it was at an age where you don't really see any symptoms. So she became, basically she became let's say she became pregnant. She did not know it. She came to know about it much later on. By the time that she came to know that she is pregnant, 24-week period was already over. So now this girl goes to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court allowed her to terminate pregnancy. Why? Because the Supreme Court understood that this girl had no idea that she was pregnant. In that case, even the 24-week period had gone away, even then they allowed. But in this case, the Supreme Court said that why were you waiting for such a long time? If you had to abort the kid, if you were not allowed to, if you were not planning to have the kid, why did you wait for such a long time? You could have come in much, much, much earlier. The Supreme Court also took into consideration the fact the lady said that I am having a lot of medicines for depression. So the lady argued that with all these medicines going into my body, it will have a negative impact on the baby, and the baby who will be born will not be healthy. This also was confirmed by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court asked the doctors in AIMS to prepare a report, and say whether the baby will be healthy or not. And the doctor said we can change the medicine and the baby will be healthy. There will be no impact on the life of the baby as such. So these medicine that she's having for depression, we can change that easily, and it will not have any impact as such. Now, this is where the Supreme Court said that we will not have, or we will not allow you to carry out this abortion. The lawyers of the women said that Article 21 allows a right to life, and it also allows a right to live with dignity. Lawyers of the women said that the women will not be able to give a dignified life to the child. The child will be born, the child may not see any motherly love, and maybe this child would not have a dignified life. So rather than that, let us not have this child at all. But the Supreme Court said this is not true, because the word life, when you say right to life means right to dignified life, that is under Article 21. In this matter, court said we are not discussing Article 21. The court said in this matter, we are discussing about the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. And in this act, the word life does not mean dignified life or anything. It just means whether you have the right to be born or not. That's it. So the argument given by the lawyer of the women, that right to life would mean right to dignified life and the child would not have it, that was also taken away by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said that no, just because you are suffering from postpartum depression, postpartum means post the pregnancy. So she was having depression after the second child. Just because you have postpartum depression doesn't really mean that the child does not have the right to live. If you wanted to abort the child, you should have done this earlier, and now you cannot do that. Now, in India, what does the law say? As I said, the law that regards or that talks about abortion in India, that law is called MTP, that is the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. Now, the interesting part is India historically, gradually we have become more liberal. Gradually we have become more towards, or we are tilting towards more right to choice kind of a society. For example, until 1960s, abortion was completely prohibited in India. That led to a lot of deaths as well. That led to a lot of people illegally trying to abort the kid. When they do it illegally, it would be unsafe. Many lives were lost as well. Then in 1960s, we had something called the Shanti Lal Shah Committee to investigate the need for abortion. After which, when the committee decided or they gave recommendation, the government of India in 1971 passed the Termination of Pregnancy Act. Because see, the problem is when the people really want to do something, even if the government bans it, people will still do it in a very hideous manner, and it will just endanger their life. Look at the example of Bihar banning alcohol. Now, officially, the Bihar government has banned alcohol. But if you talk to people who live in Bihar, they will tell you alcohol is home delivered. You don't even have to go anywhere. You should be ready to just pay the price. It's home delivered, right? You talk to people in Bihar and they'll tell you, oh, it's all available. What is happening is people, because they can't buy it legally, they are buying it illegally. They are buying it without any rules and regulations. So, as a result of which, people are consuming alcohol without any quality check. Earlier, at least when the government allowed it, government used to keep a check on the quality. Now, if it's all illegal, the government is not even checking for quality. So people are dying because of that. Similar was the case here as well. Under this act that was passed in 1971, abortion up to 20 weeks was allowed with the consent of the women and one doctor, one registered medical practitioner. Under women's permission and one doctor's permission, it was allowed. But after 2021, it was changed. The government of India updated this act. Now, up to 24 weeks also, you can allow in certain cases, such as rape survivors. You have to take approval of two doctors in this case. What about after 24 weeks? If after 24 weeks also someone wants to abort the kid, it is still possible. But it is possible under very, very strict circumstances. For example, after 24 weeks, if someone wants to abort a kid, that will only be possible if a state level medical board is formed and they give a report that fetal abnormalities have formed. Meaning that, in simple terms, if a medical board is formed that gives a report that the child who will be born with severe physical problems. The child might not survive a long time life. The child might have a difficult time. Only in that case can pregnancy be aborted even after 24 weeks. That too, if a state level medical board says yes. Now, in India, there is one other thing that happened very interestingly. In the original act, the original 1971 act, single ladies or unmarried ladies were not covered under this, meaning that before 2021, unmarried ladies were not even allowed to have abortion. It was only in 2021 that unmarried ladies were also about to have abortion, which again is much, much better, again, much safer, because just because you don't allow it doesn't mean that someone will not do it. Does mean that someone will do it illegally, so the danger becomes even more. I'll give you an example of US. So US is a country where different states have very different laws. Every state in US has their own constitution. So in US, what has happened, some states allow abortion while some states have completely banned abortion. So do you know what happens? If there's a woman who lives in a state that does not allow abortion, She drives to the other state, have the abortion, and then comes back to her state. That's what happens. Because again, that's the only cost that you'll have to pay. So again, in India, we don't have this kind of a system. At least we have an all India law, and unmarried women also are allowed to take advantage of this law. Our Supreme Court has usually been very liberal with women rights, very liberal with these kind of topics. Yes, they have still not legalized same-sex marriage, but again, on these topics, the Supreme Court has usually been very supportive of this idea. These are the changes that have been made. RMP here means registered medical practitioner, means doctor only. Means doctor, that is registered medical practitioner. As I was giving an example, the Supreme Court has allowed in certain cases abortion to take place even after 24 weeks. But this is not something that has been allowed just because the Supreme Court wants it. Only in very specific cases has the Supreme Court allowed that yes, we can have abortion even after 24 weeks. That, for example, in case of rape survivors, etc. This is a practice question that you can have. Okay. Let me see the question that have been given to me. Varman has a question. What is the state of single parent adoption in India? Varman, as I said, single parent adoption mean the only thing that you have to understand is single males cannot adopt a girl child. Praneeth is saying, is the demand to legalize homosexuality a sign of growing woke culture? Woke culture, which is dangerous. Praneeth, number one, there is no demand to decriminalize homosexuality. Homosexuality has already been decriminalized. Number one. The demand is right now to allow same sex marriage. Whether it is a part of woke culture or not, I don't know. Ask someone who's woke enough. I'm not woke enough to decide that. But yes, see, you don't know the intention of a person. For example, if 100 people are demanding something, okay, let's assume 100 people are demanding something. To assume that all 100 are demanding because of woke culture and they don't mean it would be unfair of them on them, right? So even if you make an assumption that some of them are doing it for woke culture or they just want to, let's say, be a part of the cool world, that does not really mean that all of them will be like that. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Whether it's dangerous to our society, I'm not sure how dangerous it is unless they are picking up weapons and then putting a gun on your head and then asking you also to convert. So I'm not sure how dangerous or how dangerous will that be to society. But again, you're entitled to your own opinion, ma'am. Okay, then I have a question. The questions for reservation are just not stopping, man. Just like reservation is not stopping, right? Okay, so Jay Durga has a question. Because of reservation, some categories are not able to compete with the other reserved category in society. Why doesn't government promote gender equality as priority instead of reservations? So Jay Durga, in some ways they do promote gender equality. We have the government reserving seats now in the parliament as well. If you look at some state jobs, for example, look at the state PCS. In some state PCS, there are jobs or there are reservation for women as well. It's not that the government is not doing anything. Maybe you are not happy with what the government is doing. Maybe it's not enough, but it's not to say the government is not doing anything. Then Ilyas has a question. Can same-sex marriage challenge well-established family structure of Bharat? Ilyas, it may or may not. It will only come to know when it is legalized, right? The government seems to believe that. That's why they have not passed the law. Then Abhishek saying, at this time, same-sex marriage is a criminal offense. Abhishek, at this time, same-sex marriage is not allowed in India. Not a criminal offense because it's not recognized. Something is not recognized, so it's not fair to say it's a criminal offense. It's not legalized right now. You cannot have it. It will not come under any law. Harish is saying, if we are following judicially is the supremacy, if the judiciary does not support the same-sex marriage, can the parliament make a law? How will they support? Harish, as I said multiple times, Supreme Court did not say that we do not support this idea. They said that the parliament has to take the call and we will not take the call. Mishak is saying in India as of now, if someone marries same sex, can they get punishment? Mishak, if someone marries same sex, there will not be any recognition of that marriage. As simple as that. Uh, Pulkit is saying in this case, a woman was suffering from lactation anorexia, due to which she was unaware of pregnancy, still not allowed to abort. So, Pulkit, yes, that's what I can say, not allowed to abort. I'm not saying if you want me to go into detail of what this disease is, well, I don't know. And if you have to ask why, then the Supreme Court can answer. Sorry, but I can't. Verman is saying if someone has to appeal directly to Supreme Court for abortion, doesn't it viable for everyone? Where the common people appeal, please answer. So Verman, as you know, the Supreme Court is the place where you can go if you think your fundamental rights are endangered. So when it comes to the matter of fundamental rights being endangered, Supreme Court is open to you. So is the High Court. Then I have a question from Divya. Heart of the fetus develops fully within 12 weeks, but 20 weeks window is given for abortion. What's the rationale behind the window period? Divya, the rationale behind this is again science only. The science says basically there are different views about this. There are many people who are conservative in nature. They believe that from the very first day onwards, it's a life. But then again, it depends on how do you want to consider the life is born. As you said, the heart is born. Some people would say that as long as the limbs are not born, it's not considered a child. So it depends on what your ideology is. Depending upon that, the governments take a call from time to time. Okay, a few more quickly. Then Vivek is saying from topic from question one, how to approach question on topic like this if anyone is from general category from Bihar. Vivek, doesn't matter where you are from, general category or not, Bihar or not, depends on what the question is. You have to take usually a middle stand. When whatever your question, whatever your answer is, has to be based on facts, has to be based on data, reasoning. Okay. Then Ashwin is saying how to approach this question. Ashwin, in this question, basically you have to say Supreme Court has supported the right to choice multiple times, and you can give examples of Supreme Court allowing to abort pregnancy even after 27 weeks as well on a case by case basis. Supreme Court has never made a very strict line that you can't have abortion, but they want specific reasoning to decide that. Okay, one last more before we go ahead. Mm, Ritika is saying, please tell me same sex and homosexuality terms can be used interchangeably or not. Ritika, same sex what? Same sex what? Same sex is incomplete. Same sex what? If your question is same sex and homosexuality can be interchangeable, same sex what exactly? Same sex marriage, same sex what? In simple terms, homosexuality means when you have sexual relationship with someone of the same gender as you. Simple. Okay. Ritika is saying same sex marriage. Ritika, same sex marriage is when you marry the person of the same gender. Homosexuality means when you have sexual relationship with the person of the same gender. Right? I hope you understand the difference. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next topic that we have here is about the question of electoral bond, something that you would have seen and read about multiple times earlier as well, a topic that keeps on coming in the news time and time. The idea of electoral bonds is in the news because the Supreme Court has said that the question whether electoral bonds should be allowed or not will now be decided by a five-judge constitution bench. So the idea is electoral bonds came into being in 2018. The meaning of electoral bonds is if you have to donate money to a political party, you go to the State Bank of India, only some branches. From that State Bank of India, you basically, for example, have to donate 10,000 rupees. You give them money, you do the KYC, give your documents. They will give you a piece of paper. On the piece of paper, your name will not be written. It will just be written that you have given 10,000 rupees. That piece of paper you can give to political party of your choice. That political party will deposit the money in their bank account, and the SBI will transfer the money there. That is the simplest explanation of how the electoral bonds work. Now, the idea is, ever since electoral bonds have been introduced in India since 2018, the opposition parties say that a bulk of money is only going to the party in power at the center government level. The opposition parties say that this method of political donations is highly in favor of the ruling party, because the ruling party controls the SBI, so they can get any information they want from the SBI. But we, on the other hand, as the opposition members, will not get to know anything. That becomes problematic. So, in 2018 itself, there was a challenge by the opposition parties in the Supreme Court against electoral bonds. But when this was first challenged in the Supreme Court in 2018, the Supreme Court had said that the elections are very near, 2019 elections. They said they are very near, so we will not decide the matter right now. Let this matter go on, or let the elections happen, we will decide the matter later on. So far, 5 years have passed, the matter has still not been decided. We are again near the 2024 elections, but the Supreme Court has now said that we will try to decide this matter now. There is a report given by Association of Democratic Reforms. It's an NGO that talks about politicians in India. The report says from 2017 to 2022, total donation of regional and national parties in India was about 9,188 crores. Out of all of that, 5,200 crores were just to the BJP. If you actually see, out of 9,100 crore, 5,200 crore was just to the BJP. So close to about 60%, close to this, or 58% of the donations from across the country were just going to one single party, the party that is in power. This is what the opposition parties are pointing out. They are saying that because the party in power has a control over the SBI, they can very easily get to know who is donating or who is buying bonds or not. Let's take a simple example. Let's take an example. Let's assume BJP or the party in power calls the SBI and asks them, today, who came to your bank to buy bonds? The SBI will say this XYZ person came to buy bond for 10 crore rupees. Now the BJP will see whether the person donated this bond to them or not in the next 15 days. Because maximum you get 15 days to donate the bond. If the person did not come to BJP for the next 15 days, the BJP will get to know, oh, means this person is giving money to my opposition parties. This is a problem here. That the party in power, the party in government, can have control over the SBI. So they can get information from the SBI about who came in, who is giving the money, who is buying the bonds. While the opposition parties do not have that advantage. This is the problem here. Out of most of the donations going in, most of this is going to the BJP, with 5,200 crores going just to the BJP. Second largest, Congress party received about 952 crores. Then the Trinamool Congress received about 767 crores. Ever since the electoral bonds have come in, we have seen the political parties which are in power getting much, much more money as compared to the others. Now, why were the electoral bonds introduced at the first place? They were introduced because there was a lot of black money flowing into politics. See, common people like you, me, common people don't really donate money to political parties. I don't know a single person who has ever donated money to a political party. So the question is, where do the political parties get all this money from? The answer is they get the money mainly from the corporates, the big business houses, the big businessmen. They donate money to political parties. Why? They hope that when the party of their choice comes to power, they will then make laws and policies favoring them. That is the entire expectation. This is how the electoral bonds, or this is how the entire idea of political donations work. Why would a company give money to a political party? Because the hope is when the political party comes to power, they will then make laws favoring that company. This is why electoral bonds basically don't really work as per the opposition members. That the ruling party still gets to know who is buying the bond and who is not buying the bond. The idea of not having the name of the bond is that so that the political parties cannot pressurize someone that you did not give money to us, you gave money to someone else. But because all of these are being bought by the from the SBI only, which is a government bank, the government controls everything. The idea or the solution can be maybe allow people to buy political or electoral bonds from private banks also. Tomorrow, if people can buy electoral bond from private bank, at least you can't say that the government knows all the information from them. Maybe that can be a better way forward, but the government has only allowed the SBI to sell these bonds. Electoral bond scheme, as I said, came into being in 2018. The interesting part was some other interesting things are also done by the government around the same time. Earlier, the law was there was a limit on how much maximum donation can a company give. A company could maximum donate 7.5% of their annual profit. Earlier, for example, if a company made 100 crore profit, maximum that they could donate was 7.5 crore. That was maximum. Now this is also removed. Now if the company makes 100 crore profit, they can donate full 100 crore rupees to the political party as well. Because the political party likes this law, they have removed the limit. The problem now is, as a result of this, there may be many shell companies that just have a lot of black money and they may use this black money in the political donations. That also becomes a problem. Electoral bonds can be purchased only by Indian citizens or Indian companies in the multiples of 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, or 1 crore. When you go to the SBI to buy these bonds, you will have to do the KYC, means you will have to submit your documents, your paperwork, etc. Although your name will not be written there. That is why these are called bearer bonds. These are called bearer bonds. Bearer bond means those who have it, those who are holding it, they are the real owner. For example, you have a, let's say there's a 500 rupee note. 500 rupee note, let's say it is in your hand. That is why it's your note. Tomorrow, if the 500 rupee note is held by someone else, it will become his note. Because the note does not have your name, it does not bear your name. Whoever is holding the note, it is his or her note. Similarly, here also with the electoral bonds, it does not have anyone's name. You are holding it, that means you are the owner. Someone else is holding it, that means they are the owners. That is how electoral bonds work in politics. When you buy the bond from the SBI, within 15 days, you will have to give it to the political party. Donors who contribute less than 20,000 to political parties to electoral bonds are not required to give their identity, such as PAN account number, etc. Means when you go to SBI to buy electoral bonds, if you are buying less than 20,000, then you don't have to give your PAN detail, etc. But if you buy more than 20,000 worth of electoral bonds, that means you will have to give your identification in the form of PAN number as well. The other question is, can you give to electoral bonds to any political party? Or is there some condition, is there some eligibility criteria? There is one condition, that is the political party should have got at least 1% votes in the last election. Only those political parties which are registered under the RPA and they got at least 1% votes in the last election. Only if you got 1% votes in the last election, only and only then are you eligible to get these bonds. You cannot get or give these bonds to other political parties. Now, the problem is these electoral bonds were introduced with the intention of cleaning politics or removing black money, but in reality, it has not happened. In reality, there are a lot of issues with the electoral bond scheme. First, no transparency. For example, they may not qualify for income tax, and they discourage voters also from actually donating money. See, the reason that some people donate money to political parties is it gives them exemption from income tax, it allows them to pay lower income tax. But in this case, even if you buy electoral bond, you still have to pay income tax on that amount. There are privacy concerns because the government can get to know your information. If you actually go and you give your information to the SBI while buying a bond, the government or the ruling party can easily come to know who you are. The other problem, as we discussed earlier, there was a limit of 7.5% of your profit. There was a maximum limit on how much money you could donate. But now that limit has also gone away, meaning that now you can donate any money to the political party, even the political parties that are not making any profit, even they can donate money to political party. That becomes problematic because now people can make shell companies which are not doing any work just for the purpose of giving money to the political parties. This ADR report that we discussed, the Association of Democratic Reforms report, they have said that electoral bonds is now the chief source of revenue for the political parties, with thousands of crores of rupees going into the coffers of the political parties year after year. See, the one other big problem is, let's say I am a normal voter, okay? Before the elections, when I decide who to vote for, I should have the right to know which political party is getting money from whom. For example, if I am going to choose a political party, should I not know who is giving money to the political party first before deciding? That is problematic because electoral bonds do not make the information public. You cannot file an RTI to get to know who donated money to whom. That becomes a big problem. If you look at how much money has come in, most of the money has come in from the corporate sector, and electoral bonds are also bought mainly by the businessmen or corporates only. It is the national parties that get most of the money. That is why you will see national parties giving many more ads, holding many more rallies as compared to the smaller regional parties. Also, obviously, those who are in power get most of the money, which is very obvious. Everyone who wants to donate money, you would donate money to get a favor from the government. Very few people donate money to the opposition parties thinking that they will also come to power. Whoever comes to power will get all the riches, will get all the money, because that is how the people actually contribute money. This is how it usually works. This is a practice question that you have for electoral bonds. Let me quickly take up a couple of questions. Varman is saying, why someone lies to appeal directly to Supreme Court for abortion? Is it viable for anyone? Where do common people appeal? Varman, common people go to Supreme Court only, man. I don't know why do you think common people don't go to Supreme Court. The women who went to Supreme Court are common people only. There are common people only who go to Supreme Court or High Court. Don't worry. Avinash is saying, why companies give money to political parties? Avinash, as I said, people or political parties get money from the company because the companies think or hope when this political party that I am supporting comes to power, they will make a law, give me permission for more work, so I'll get more money. It's an investment. It's more of an investment. Guys, now let's do this. We have two short topics to go. So now what we'll do is we will quickly first discuss these two topics rather than taking questions in between. So let's finish these topics discussion first. After that, if you have questions, you can ask those. I'll answer. If you don't have questions, you can leave so that the others who want to leave before can. Okay. So I'll take the remaining question at the end of the at the end when I'm over with these two topics. So the last two topics are from the Yojana magazine. the Yojana magazine of the last month issue, that is September issue, we have taken up two important topics. One, women empowerment and what has the government done with respect to women empowerment. And the other topic that we have taken up is Law Commission of India. Now, women empowerment as a theme is extremely important for UPSC every year. Every year you do see some questions regarding women empowerment. It can be in the form of some statement in the essay, it can be in social justice, that is GS2, it can be in GS1 also in Indian society, it can be in GS4 also ethical point of view. If you have optional such as sociology, etc., then again you will see women related issues being asked time and time again. So women related issues have anyways always have been a top priority of what the questions are by the UPSC. Now, in this article of the Yojana magazine, and we will be discussing a short form of it, the Yojana magazine basically is a kind of an advertisement by the government. Yojana, Kurukshetra, when you read these magazines, you will not really see a lot of criticism of the government. These are magazines that tell you about what the government has been doing or how good our government is. So when you read Yojana magazine, etc., you will see details about the government schemes, what the government has done, how good the government is. Don't read Yojana Kurukshetra to get a criticism of the government. Read Yojana Kurukshetra to get data about the government programs. So, for example, this magazine tells us what is it that the government has done for political empowerment of women. The Women Reservation Act that we all know passed in the government or passed in the parliament by the government of India. We already have the 33% women reservation in our local governance, panchayats and municipalities. Remember that 33% reservation that we have in panchayat and municipality is a minimum 33%. The states can go beyond that as well. Many states have gone beyond 33%. Bihar, Maharashtra, they have 50% women reservation, panchayat and municipalities. Government has been encouraging political parties to have more women nominated, but that is again just very generic statement. How can the government force a political party to have a women candidate? That's not really true. But yes, because Yojana is more of a government mouthpiece, so they say that the government is encouraging political parties to name more women candidate. But that's not possible, right? How can the government ask the Congress to name more women candidate? That's not really something that is practical on the ground. There have been economic reforms by the government as well. For example, government has been promoting equal pay for equal work irrespective of gender. Government has ensured there's no disparity in the work that you or disparity in the pay that you get. Government has established maternity leave benefits, so you get 26 weeks of maternity leave or paid maternity leave if you're a working woman. Women have also been getting easier finances from the bank under schemes such as Mudra Yojana, Mahila Udyam Nidhi Yojana. These are examples that you can quote in the mains exam about what the government has done for social empowerment and economic empowerment of women. The Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act that we just discussed. Then Digital India also is focusing on land record modernization, meaning that the land records that we have or the land distribution that we have in the rural areas especially is a big problem. Most of the old land records are just made on paper, and there are a lot of problems. You go to court to challenge against those laws. The government of India is trying to make sure that land records are digitalized as much as possible rather than only being handmade. Then there are examples of government schemes, which all of you would have read about, given by the Yojana magazine, of what the government has done. Because again, the Yojana magazine is a mouthpiece of the government, so you will notice they are only telling you the government schemes after 2014. See, they are not telling you government scheme before 2014. Doesn't mean that there were no schemes before that. Just that because the government wants to tell their point of view, so they'll tell you schemes from 2015. Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Matru Vandana Yojana to give assistance to pregnant women, Mahila Heart to give more encouragement to women entrepreneurs, etc. We have Ujjwala Yojana to give free LPG cylinders to reduce domestic pollution. Stand Up India to give loans to women entrepreneurs, easier loans, and this has worked. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana for skill development. Again, these are not the only schemes that we have in India for women empowerment, but the ones that have been introduced by the current government. Apart from this, the article in the Yojana magazine also gives us information about government reforms, new laws introduced for women's safety and security. For example, we have the criminal law amendment, that is, for sexual offenses, the punishment is much, much stringent now. After the Nirbhaya case of Delhi, the punishment for rape has become much higher. The Maternity Benefit Act, as I said earlier, women in India used to only get 12 weeks of paid leave. Now, pregnant women get 26 weeks of paid leave. We also have much stricter laws for protection of children from sexual offenses. The government has also made a law for Muslim women protection of rights of marriage that led to banning of triple talaq. So government in fact also made sure that triple talaq and these kind of things are banned. The government also made it very stringent to have a strict law about sexual harassment of women at workplace. All these are initiatives that the government has introduced in the past few years to help women in living a much, much better life. See, guys, I'm not sure how many of you try to answer the questions that we give you, but I will suggest you at least try and answer this one. At least try and answer this one. This is a quote that was given by Malala Yousafzai. This is a quote given by Malala Yousafzai. Try and write this answer. Malala Yousafzai, as you know, the Nobel Prize winner for peace, the young girl from Afghanistan. Please try and answer this question at least. At least all the women here who are attending the class, you try and write the answer. The boys, anyways, are a gone case. The women at least try and write the answer to this. See if you are able to quote good examples. Okay, let's move ahead and finish the last one, and then we'll take up whatever the question that you have. The last topic that we have taken up is the Law Commission of India, a body that you keep on hearing a lot about in terms of the reports that they give, but we don't read a lot about what is the Law Commission, how is it formed, what do they do exactly. So basically, the Law Commission of India is a body that works under the Department or the Ministry of Law and Justice, Department of Legal Affairs. It's kind of an executive body. As the name suggests, their job is to make reports on the government, to try and tell the government what are the new types of laws that should be introduced, if there are any changes in the existing law. For example, the Law Commission came a lot in the news when Uniform Civil Code was in the news. The Uniform Civil Code that was in the news, it was because the Law Commission of India had asked common citizens to give their views about Uniform Civil Code. That is why this debate again came in the news. The Law Commission of India usually has a 3-year term. It is established by the Government of India. The Government of India usually appoints well-known judges, well-known lawyers into these kind of commissions and asks them to submit reports on various matters. Again, the report that these law commission, etc., give, they are not binding on the government. The Law Commission has a full-time chairperson, four full-time members. There is a secretary of Department of Legal Affairs, secretary of Legislative Department also, and not more than 5 part-time members. Again, the full-time members and the part-time members here are people who are very well experienced in the field of law, so that they can analyze the existing law and they can suggest to the government what are the new types of laws that are required in the society. What do? They give reports on the reference of Government of India. So Government of India, for example, will ask them a specific question, that do we need a certain type of a law, or how do we make a certain law. Supreme Court, High Courts may also ask them questions. And interestingly, they can even take up some matters suo moto. So by themselves also they can take up a certain matter if they think that they need to prepare a report on that as well. They prepare a report, they can even take recommendations from the common people, and then they submit to the government of India for its consideration. The government will decide what to do with this. The government might make a law on this, the government might ignore this as well, depends on the government. Depends how the government likes this particular report or not. Again, many governments have rejected the ideas of law commission. I'll give you an example. Many law commissions, for example, in the past have suggested already that we should have one nation, one election. Many law commissions in the past have suggested something like state funding of elections, that the government of India should give money to political parties to fight elections. So there are many of these ideas that have been accepted, but many of them have also been rejected in the past. Law commission reports are important material to quote in the exam. If you're writing a mains answer, you can quote recommendation of the law commission as a very good example of what should the government do and how should the government go ahead and implement these. As I said, this is in the news because of uniform civil code again being in the news, because of the law commission asking for people for their advice. Pretty straightforward simple question from this one. Analyze the composition and the working of the Law Commission of India. This brings us to the end of today's webinar. From my end, I have a few minutes and I'll answer some questions for you in case you have some. If you don't have any questions, in that case, you're free to leave. Bye bye. Good night. Okay. Then let me see some questions. Brahman is saying, from governance, what is the most important to read from the last unit? Brahman, I'm not sure what do you mean by last unit. Maybe if you can tell me a topic, I can tell you. Abhishek is saying, after 24 weeks of pregnancy, judiciary will decide women should be allowed or not. Does the lower court have the power to decide, or is it not increasing burden of pending case on judiciary? Abhishek, no, lower court doesn't have the power to decide. These matters again are related to fundamental rights, so they can go to either High Court or the Supreme Court only, not to the subordinate judiciary after that. Ritika is saying, how to attempt point 5 question. Ritika, you are a woman, you have to attempt this question. The question number 5 is mostly about the rights of women, the significance of the women. You can give an example of how women have been instrumental in making better laws. You can give examples of India. You can give historical examples as well. Arjun, census is something that can be conducted only by the central government. That is why the Bihar government found a loophole and they said, we are not conducting a census, we are conducting a survey. Then Sushmit is saying, can you summarize the time period and requirement in the main judgment? Sushmit, I don't know which one are you talking about. We discussed a lot of judgments today. Abortion case, same-sex marriage case. I'm not sure which judgment you're talking about. Praneeth, I've already answered your question when you're asking why do people donate to political parties. I told you, people donate to political parties if they like a political party. If they think that someone will do a good job while coming to power, you want to support them, as simple as that. If you don't like them, don't vote for them. Don't worry, it's not a compulsion for you, man. Prashansa is saying, why do we get examples of answer writing basically a complete answer? Prashansa, you get answer writing model answers for the mains test series. So once the mains test series starts, you will get model answers for that. So Shmit, for the MTP, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, in short, it says that you can abort your child in the first 20 weeks 20 if one doctor permits you. You can abort a kid till 24 weeks if two doctors permit you, and in some cases like rape survivors, after 24 weeks, if you have to get a child aborted, you have to take a permission from medical board that has to certify that there is some fetal abnormality, child will not be born normal, only then you can abort after 24 weeks. Vishal is saying, we see many OBCs gain very high posts till they are taking benefit from reservation. Is it not against social justice? Vishal, it is against social justice and it is against law as well, because under the in the OBC reservation we have a concept of creamy layer. Creamy layer prohibits financially strong OBCs to get reservation from the next generation onwards. So if you find some, you can complain. That's all I can tell you. All right, then these were the questions given to me. We have come to the end of today's class. I hope all of you learned something new today. Make sure you ask more questions to other teachers as well when they take the webinar. Okay, then on that note, I'll bring this to an end. Thank you so much. All the very best. I'll see you soon in the next one. Bye bye. Good night. Jai Hind.